Hello and welcome to the first ever Fire Emblem discussion map analysis. Today we will be taking a look at Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn's Prologue map. It's one of my personal favorite maps of all time and one of the most memorable Prologue chapters in the entire series. We're going to take a look at 5 different aspects of this map and chapter. Each of those will receive a rating out of 100, 100 being the best it could possibly be, and 1 being the worst. So let's get started. When you first start up Radiant Dawn, you are greeted with an opening cutscene involving Micaiah, her bird Yune, some Benyon soldiers, and so the soldiers are looking for Micaiah in an attempt to capture her and turn her over to their superior commander, as she is a very important member of a radical group of freedom fighters called the Dawn Brigade. Upon being captured, Micaiah is rescued by Soth. Combat ensues. This battle illustrates some good gameplay and character foreshadowing for future maps, but we will discuss that in another video. After the battle, Micaiah, Soth, and the bird Yune all escape from the abandoned fort. This scene is a perfect setup for the prologue, as it shows the player that these characters are being hunted down as criminals. It sets the stage for their heroic actions in the chapter to come. Following this cutscene, Micaiah is speaking with Edward, another member of the Dawn Brigade. They are waiting for their comrade Leonardo in the capital of Dane, Nevesa, when tragedy strikes. The local townsfolk are being harassed by bandits. Micaiah and Edward speak with a middle-aged woman and young boy who tell them what is happening. Edward volunteers to help, and with Micaiah's endorsement, the two run into the fray. Upon fighting her first brigand, Micaiah is threatened by her enemy. She responds in a different language, which translates to "O light, gather upon my path." Micaiah's use of this ancient language could be a clue to observant players who have played Path of Radiance before this game. It is a nice touch and serves as a nice bit of foreshadowing for some endgame events. After dealing the killing blow to her first brigand, Micaiah says, "No matter the manner of man, the goddess judges with an even hand," sharing with the player that Micaiah is a holy woman who, while she may not enjoy the thought of killing people, does what she must to protect those around her. Once some time passes, Leonardo joins the battle to assist Micaiah and Edward. When asked how he found them, Leonardo responds that a little bird told him. That bird being Yune, which was something that was actually set up in the opening cutscene, showing that Yune has the ability to lead Micaiah's friends to her. The boss of this map, Pugo, has 2 different quotes, one with Micaiah and one with either Edward or Leonardo. Before battling Micaiah, Pugo essentially complains that fellow thieves are interfering with his pillaging. Micaiah responds by saying, "These people work hard to feed their families mere scraps. Then you come along and steal what little they've earned." This conversation demonstrates just how little so many people understand the Dawn Brigade. Pugo refers to them as thieves, when they are much more than that. Micaiah's response is proof of this. They may steal, but is to help the poor. Pugo's conversation with either Edward or Leonardo shows how little is actually known about the Dawn Brigade. He says, "Who do you brads think you are, the Dawn Brigade?" Edward's or Leonardo's young appearance can be misleading, but they are the Dawn Brigade. The fact that others don't know who they are shows just how mysterious their brigade really is. Once the enemies are routed, Micaiah and friends are thanked by the locals, and then they run away from the Benyon occupation forces, just like Micaiah and Soth do in the opening cutscene. As far as story and map integration goes, Under Gray Skies has solid conversations with NPCs and enemies that go a long way in establishing the setting of Radiant Dawn and the dire circumstances that the people of Dane are facing. It sets up the whole of Part 1 perfectly, demonstrating just why the Dawn Brigade wants to change the sad state of their homeland. Though the story surrounding the chapter is well put together, it is not integrated into the map as well as it could have been. Yes, the characters fight some brigands to save townsfolk, but if they really wanted to take the story integration to the next level, Benyon reinforcements could have appeared, at which point the map becomes an escape chapter. This small change could have integrated the story with the gameplay beautifully. With all that said, I can't justify giving the story integration a higher score than 65. I really like the story overall, but the battle and map itself do not illustrate the need for the Dawn Brigade to run from Benyon officials. We're simply told that this is the case rather than being shown with gameplay. Taking a look at the artistic value of this map, it is well put together. It feels like a medieval big city. There are stands selling goods, stone homes, and even a port, which I originally thought was really weird because this city is in the middle of the country. But once I looked at the full map of Dane, you can actually see a small body of water right next to Nevesa's mark on the map. So, points for being geographically sound, I guess. There's nothing too special about the way Under Gray Skies looks, but there's nothing offensive either. The music playing on this map is pretty good, and it does a decent job of conveying the feeling of the story surrounding this map. It has tones of despair, while it also reaches points of relief or even hopeful sounding measures. The player phase battle music is some of my favorite in the entire series, however it does not really add to the aesthetic presentation of the map. The enemy phase battle music is just generic sounding. It could belong in any Fire Emblem game. There's nothing unique about it. With looks and sound all considered, 70 out of 100 is where we will land on this one. Nothing spectacular here, but it gets the job done. Depending on which difficulty you play on, the map either looks like this, this, or this. On easy mode, each generic brigand has the following stats. Nothing too scary. All 3 are level 1. Normal mode has 4 extra enemies. 2 of these are level 1 with the same stats as the easy mode brigands, 3 of the brigands are level 2 and can have +1 in some stats, and the final 2 brigands are level 3 and have +1 in each stat compared to the level 1 brigand and +2 HP. Hard mode has the same amount of enemies as normal mode, but each enemy has received 2 level ups with the stats to go with them. As far as inventory goes, across all modes, they all have bronze axes and there is 1 brigand with a droppable healing herb. In easy mode, the boss Pugo has a bronze axe with these stats. On normal mode and hard mode, he has an iron axe with buff stats. On easy mode, the boss does not move, but on normal and hard, if there is a player character in the boss's range, he will move to attack. Overall, he hits really hard and can kill Micaiah in 1 hit on normal and hard mode. However, without any 2 range options, he goes down very easy with the combined forces of 2 ranged units and Edward. With that, let's talk about the player units and how well they handle these enemies. From turn 1, Micaiah and Edward are available. Micaiah is terribly squishy and can't take more than 1 hit without dying. However, she has a ranged attack that hits resistance. Though the enemies on the map have 0 magical resistance, she will not be able to kill anyone on her own. On top of that, Micaiah has the unique ability Sacrifice, which allows her to heal allies at the expense of her own HP. To sum up, Micaiah is a good support unit on this map, being able to deal safe damage and heal her friends. Where Micaiah is strictly a support unit, Edward is going to be the main fighter of this map. His stats allow him to double every enemy on the map aside from Pugo himself. Though he doubles, he cannot kill any enemies in 1 round, unless he triples his damage with a critical hit. He also has the skill Wrath, which when his HP is below 30% grants him 50 extra critical. If Edward is hit with 2 attacks from any brigand or 1 attack from Pugo on normal and hard, he will be in Wrath range. It is a high risk, high reward situation, but this map is actually set up pretty well to take advantage of that. At the beginning of turn 4, Leonardo the Archer shows up. He can only attack from 2 range and he cannot counter attack any enemies on this map. He can double the level 1 enemies and some level 2 enemies on normal mode, but his main role is simply to deal chip damage from afar and let Edward deal the final blow. So in total, how do the player units match up with the enemy units? Micaiah and Leonardo can deal good damage from afar and Edward can effectively deal a lot of damage by double attacking, but none of them can deal enough damage to kill an enemy on their own. But any combination of the 3 that includes Edward can kill any generic enemy on the map. Pugo, on the other hand, requires a little more work. Either a critical attack from Edward or all 3 attacking him is what it takes. Honestly, not having a unit that can steamroll any enemies on the map makes for an engaging experience involving all characters, and there are few enough enemies that it doesn't get annoying that you can't 1-round enemies. For a score, I personally love how the player units and enemy units are balanced in this map, so we'll give it a 95 out of 100. Under Gray Skies starts the player out in the northwest corner. From that corner, there is a tight corridor created by fences and barrels. Because it is narrow, the player has a lot of good choke points to use, allowing Micaiah and later Leonardo to hide behind Edward as they attack from safe position. Upon making it through the narrow section, the player then must move their units north through a wide open area. Finally, the boss can be found in the northeast corner of the map, where it is also a tight alleyway that allows the player to position Edward in such a way that he can protect the squishies from the boss. Limiting the traversable tiles allows the player to better predict what the enemy will do, which is a very good thing in relation to the unit balance, being that none of your units can take more than 3 hits before death, and Micaiah usually can't take any damage. The map layout itself is a tool for the player to utilize, rather than it being just a setting for a battle. And if the player does use it right, the battle is sure to end in their favor. For map layout, I will give Under Gray Skies a score of 80 out of 100. It is pretty basic, but it does a lot with the limited resources it has to work with. It services the available characters well, while also making good unit placement important. My only gripe with the map layout is that on easy difficulty, it ends up being a lot of free space because there's so few enemies, where on normal and hard mode, the unit density makes it a fun puzzle to work with. All in all, it isn't perfect, but it does its job well. Finally, let's talk about what I think is the most important part of any map's design, and it encompasses aspects from all of the previous 4 sections. Is the map engaging? Let's go step by step and talk about what the player will experience as they play through Under Gray Skies. First, the player is greeted with an opening cinematic featuring 2 key characters. It immediately draws the player in, or makes them laugh at the cheesy dialogue and animations. Either way, it is an enjoyable experience. From there, it cuts to a conversation between Micaiah and Edward, where they exposit on some important plot points like Micaiah's foresight and how it works. The music is serene, yet there is a certain sadness to it. It is a good contrast to the excitement of the opening scene. The music then changes to sinister brass instruments backed up by some ominous percussion. A middle-aged woman and a young boy appear to tell Micaiah and Edward that there are brigands running amok in the city. Of course, our heroes jump in to save the day. We are then introduced to the enemy through some dialogue from the boss. Then the battle starts. The player most likely moves in to attack the first brigand with Micaiah from a distance. We are then met with some dialogue with a bandit where he threatens to sell Micaiah. Following that interaction, the player moves Edward in to kill the brigand. On the enemy phase, a brigand moves towards the player but is unable to reach them. This allows for Micaiah and Edward to pull off the same maneuver and take him down. Following that, there is a neatly placed choke point for Edward to stand in, but first he may need some healing, which can be done by either consuming an item or by having Micaiah use sacrifice. At this point, the battle may begin to feel a bit stale. It looks like it's going to be a rinse and repeat cycle of having Edward tank and dodge attacks, while Micaiah attacks from a distance. But suddenly a new unit appears, fresh blood to keep the battle interesting. From there, it is a pretty basic flow of having Micaiah and Leonardo deal chip damage and having Edward finish them off, until we get to Pugo. From there, it is just a matter of positioning your units to keep them safe while also being able to deal damage to the boss. If done properly, the player is rewarded with the perfect placement for all of their units, allowing them all to attack Pugo safely. Upon routing the map, the music is relaxing and comforting. Micaiah, Edward, and Leonardo celebrate their success with the townspeople, but that celebration is short-lived and they must run away when the Benyon occupation forces appear. Finally, the player is introduced to Jared, who is set up here to be the main antagonist of this arc of the story. Overall, the player is likely to be very engaged in this map. The story, while not integrated into the gameplay as well as it could be, is interesting. The puzzle-like nature of enemy placement and map layout keep the player thinking about where to place their units. And just when the map starts getting a little boring a few turns in, it introduces a new playable character, helping to keep the map fresh and exciting. This is a very engaging map that is sure to keep the player entertained, while not overstaying its welcome. I give it a 90 out of 100 for its engagement. Under Gray Skies may just be the best Prologue map in all of Fire Emblem. So often, Prologue maps are too easy and are irrelevant to the larger story. Radiant Dawn starts off with a bang to keep the player interested and excited for the rest of the game. My overall score for Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn's Prologue map, Under Gray Skies, is 90 out of 100. It has next to no flaws of commission, but it does have a few things that it could have added to make the play experience all the better. Thanks for watching, friends. Make sure to share this video with any Fire Emblem fans you know. Any sharing you do helps a lot and allows us to reach new people. Also, please comment your thoughts. Let me know how you would rate today's chapter, and as always, like and subscribe for more Fire Emblem discussion.